What's good? What's good? This is the Seek Community Podcast. My name is Joshua Nelson, and I like to talk about dating, how people meet people, and building community. I'm going to tell you guys about this satanic cult leader that I had interviewed for work the other day. It was a pretty interesting conversation for sure. I work in journalism. I work for Fox News. The whole journey precipitating to Fox News is a story in itself, but I cover education policy, so I'm tracking what's going on in the school system, what's going on in the classroom. It's been a lot of controversy in the classroom, especially as it pertains to what kind of books are being administered to students, talking about LGBTQ issues. And I think it all is a fascinating debate because I think both sides are valid arguments. Should we shelter kids from certain issues that are going on in the real world, or should we leave that up for the parents to talk about? And I think both sides have a pretty interesting argument for that because who should decide that we have these conversations? If you're a parent and you're sheltering your kid from the LGBTQ community, if you're teaching them certain things about that community that could be very toxic, that couldn't be good for the kid. And then you have teachers who may show a perspective that could show them that, maybe not all of people in that group are like this. Or then again, you can flip it and say teachers are pushing an agenda on these kids, and because they don't understand what's going on in the real world, it could shape how they view things. It could lead them to a certain ideology. So, who gets to decide who has these conversations? Is it the administrators in the school system, or should it be the parents? Um, and that's why I've been tracking this issue. This all leads to the satanic cult leader that I interviewed. His name is Lucian Glee. What's his name? Is Lucian something? I forgot his name, but starts with a G. You can look it up. Look up the leader of the Satanic Temple. I know his first name is Lucian. I wonder if he changed his name to Lucian because that sounds similar to Lucifer. But when I interviewed him, he seemed like a pretty normal guy. I know if you look at him on the surface, he does look like a villain from a Marvel movie, which was kind of funny because I'm like, he's exactly what you would think a satanic cult leader would look like. He's exactly how you would think that they would look like. So interviewing him was a little bit of a laugh for me because I'm just like, wow, this guy, uh, his appearance definitely comes across as a cult leader. But when he talks, he kind of sounds like a dude. He's like a bro. That's what I got from him. He's like a bro and kind of kept it simple. His whole mantra was in the school system, a lot of Christian related after school clubs were proselytizing to students. I didn't even know what he meant when he said proselytizing. I'm like, what does that mean? Proselytizing. Interesting word. What that means is when you force your views on someone or some thing or people in general. That's what proselytizing means. The Satanic Temple is against that. They are against the fact that you have these Christian after school clubs talking about the word of God, shoving the Bible down these kids' throats. They don't like that. They don't like that. We can't be thumping the Bible on these kids. They were approved to open after school club at a school in Memphis. I did a story on it. And then when I did that story, I followed up with the Satanic Temple organization, talked to their spokesperson for that after school club. it was a young woman, it seemed like, and she told me about the after school club, and she had a very cheerful um tone to her. You could tell she was very young, but she was very adamant about facilitating these clubs and making sure they are, providing fun activities for the kids. Fun activities from the Satanic Temple. That's kind of funny because what if you're a parent and you find out, hey, there's this satanic club going on after school. They're going to administer fun activities for the kids. That's hilarious to me. So she was talking about how they have fun activities for the kids. And, they were allowed to do this because they have free speech protections from the First Amendment. And that's what the school had said. That's why they were able to do that. And obviously, when the school had approved this caused major controversy. It was a lot of controversy for sure. So they had to clarify that and had to issue a statement for the public. And I requested a follow-up interview for the Satanic Temple just to see what these after-school clubs were all about. And I was able to speak to Lucian. And like I said, Lucian, he kind of kept it simple. He said, we're all about just stopping the proselytizing, or not stopping. He said they wanted to provide an alternative to the Christian clubs who were proselytizing to the students. So then, he also talked about the activities they were doing. They were going to do like puzzles and, just fun games for the kids. And they also said that they, they'll bring in animals like reptiles and snakes, which makes sense, right? I mean, you got to bring snakes and reptiles to the Satanic after school club. That makes sense. But that's what they were all about. And so in this interview, I basically just wanted to get to the root of why were they facilitating these clubs, yet they didn't want to convert the kids. They don't want to convert the kids, but they still were seeking to expand these clubs. I know they were in 5 other states. So they're in California, Connecticut. I forget the others. Tennessee, one of them, because the school that I covered was based in Tennessee. And that's what my main question was. If you guys aren't trying to convert these kids into Satanism, then what exactly are you trying to do? And then I found out that I had reached out to a Christian after school club. I love my job. I really do. I love my job. My job is so fun. Reached out to a Christian after school club called the Good News Club. They're under the Christian Evangelical Fellowship. And that's an organization, I think, they do a lot of gospel preaching in several capacities. Among them is the Christian after school club called the Good News Good, and they have like over 3,000 of these clubs. And I reached out to them and they say the Satanic Temple, they only start clubs where we're located. And I'm like, well, okay, that's pretty fascinating. So then, as a journalist doing my due diligence, I reach back out to the Satanic Temple and I say, hey, is this true? And they say, yes, this is true. We don't want the Christian clubs to be the only clubs that are available at any school, because we believe they're proselytizing the students, meaning they're forcing their views on these kids. And these kids aren't having the freedom to think for themselves. That was the mantra that this Satanic Temple was pushing, was that the kids aren't thinking for themselves. Was that they wanted the kids to think for themselves. I'm sorry. I don't want to misconstrue what they were saying. But that's what they were pushing, was that they wanted to teach the kids freedom of thought, freedom of opinion, and to be able to express themselves however they want. And they were able to do this through, the activities in the club. And they said that these activities were intended to teach the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. You can look that up. but I know empathy is one of them. They have, a few others I can't think of at the top of my head, but essentially what they want is to teach the kids how to think for themselves. And there's merits to that argument. It's kind of hard to sell that when you have the label of the Satanic Temple. It's going to be hard for you to sell that to a parent. So, if I'm a parent, even if I'm a non-Christian, I just don't have a positive association that I can think of for Satan. I mean, Satan is so, just in our pop culture, it doesn't seem good. It doesn't seem like it's anything good that comes out of Satan. So, the Satanic Temple hosting an after-school club for your kids, going to teach them fun activities. Bring them on in. Then you look at the leader, and he looks like a villain from a video game or a Marvel movie or something, and you're going to be like, "Oh no, man, I don't know about that." But he and we had a regular conversation. It was a regular interview. So it was just a pretty interesting experience for me because I never thought I'd be interviewing the leader of the Satanic Temple. That's for sure. He's been on our network. He's been on the cable news network. I'm on the digital side of Fox. I write articles. I don't do the television division at all. I personally think TV is overrated. That's my personal opinion. I like writing. That's what I like to do. I enjoy writing. I enjoy weaving storytelling, research, and data into a one piece of content. So I did this interview and then it published and then it got a pretty significant draw. Got a pretty good reception that I wanted. But everybody else are like, "Oh man, you interviewed the Satanic leader. You need to wash yourself off, man. You need to, wash out your mouth or something. That guy, he probably tainted you or something." And it was kind of eerie interviewing the leader of the Antichrist, right? I mean, Satan tried to rebel against God. Obviously, Satan, the enemy only comes to seek, kill, and destroy and steal. So it's kind of I think it was a good thing for me though. It was because it got me thinking about a lot. And one thing it got me thinking about was just how people find cults, how people find community. Imagine joining the Satanic Temple. Like, what leads someone to join the Satanic Temple? And I guess you can say that for anything, right? You can say, what leads someone to join the Christian faith, which I get. So, I don't want to look down on people who do that, but I do want to talk about, where do we gain our validation from, and how do we find certain communities? And I do think that all stems from our source of a need for validation and our identity. I think identity is such a huge factor in what just leads us to certain communities and groups, organizations and ideologies. And that's something that for myself that I have struggled with. In a sense, I've struggled with identity because there's so many things that I'm interested in that I'm trying to do that I never really thought about who am I trying to be. And I think that's why I was lonely for a lot of, honestly, ever since high school. I was never in a friend group. I was never the athlete. I was never the smart kid. I was just in a weird spot. I was never anything. You couldn't put me in the box. And a lot of people, I think, early on they figure out what their thing is, their niche. They find their passion. Early on, they figure out, how far they want to go in life, and they kind of get a sense of their ceiling. And then a lot of people, they do get put in those boxes, and in a lot of ways it helps them and it hurts them. Like, if you're the nerd, I can see it. You're the nerd, it's like, okay, you're super, super smart. There's a lot of merits in that, but also people have high expectations for you to succeed. And that could be a lot of pressure, right? If you're an athlete, the same thing. If you put all of your stock into making it to the NFL or even making it to a Division I school, and it doesn't happen, and you're like, dang, people are disappointed because they're like, dude, you're the star athlete, you're the star quarterback, you're the star point guard, what happened? So in a lot of ways, people prescribe our identities to us, or sometimes we do it to ourselves. And I think too, it does feel good to get that sense of validation, to have that sense of validation. So as I'm interviewing the Satanic Temple leader, I'm like, there are people who believe in what he says. They have they get a lot of affirmation from what they do, because one of the things that he said was, as the leader of the Satanic Temple, we didn't want to remove the satanic label from it because we want people to know that we do good work. Like we are out here doing good things, and we shouldn't have to change our name to resonate with people. We are the Satanic Temple. We do charitable work. Obviously we, are running the after school program. We're trying to help build kids up, and I'm like, wow, okay. So there are people that are drawn to that, and they're drawn to them. And I think the whole also too, the Satanic Temple, they're very like anti-establishment, very I'm assuming unorthodox in a lot of the things that they do, right? So it's supposed to be antithetical to Christianity, where we're very orderly. We believe in one truth. We believe in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, for one, and all of the truth stems from that. So they're really the yin and yang to us. But there are people who follow the Satanic Temple, and I'd like to talk to a regular person who's in the Satanic Temple, like anybody who just shows up, go to I don't know if they have church on Sunday. Do they go to church on Sunday? I mean, it would make sense, right? You want to, coincide with the Christian church. I mean, I don't know. I guess it. I mean, if you're, planting clubs wherever there are Christian organizations, I'm assuming that they have, service on Sunday, worshiping Satan. But it just got me thinking a lot about that. That how do we get our validation, and what shapes our identity? So, and I do think we're finding our validation in the wrong places. And again, I talk about my nightclub experience. I was just going to the nightclubs because everyone else was doing it, and I kind of felt like the cool kid doing that. Like, oh, I saw you at the club dancing with this girl. I look like the guy who gets girls. I look like the guy who is social and outgoing because I'm out in these nightclubs. And just a little background, those nightclubs weren't good for me spiritually. So we continue to do things because other people, they make us feel good for doing what we're doing. And I think too, like the reason why people join gangs, why people join fraternities, or just, any type of organization in general, why we get drawn to toxic relationships, I think that plays a part in it, because someone is giving us validation. Someone is giving us that sense of who we are, or there may be something we're really, really good at, and then people are propping that up, and then we put our heart and soul into that one thing. Like I was talking about sports. You're good at basketball. It's like, okay, you're the basketball guy. Again, I was good at the drums too. So when you're good at the drums, I was always the drummer guy. That's kind of what I was. They always put me in a box of like, oh man, he played the drums. Oh, that's the drummer boy. That's the beat boy. And that's why at that time I thought I was going to be a music producer, because I thought that was my calling. That's what I was meant to do. I'm the drummer boy. I make beats, right? I'm out beating on the table. I'm sure y'all did that before. Get the pencil and the or a pen, and you just banging on the tables. I was real good at that. I also played the snare drum. In middle school, I was real good at that. I was doing all the little tricks. You know what I mean? I was trying to be like my man's from Drumline. So that just came natural to me. It came easy to me. And then I did that at church too. And then that's all church was for me, was playing the drums. You know, it wasn't listening to what the pastor said, because again, I was focused on, you know, how can I get people's attention by playing these drums? That was my identity at the time, was the drums. And I had this internship in high school, because we had this program at the school I went to in Detroit where we can get an internship set up. And I had one at a music studio. It was somewhere off 8 Mile. And, you know, the guy was teaching me how to make beats. He had people come in, and, you know, I got to see them work, got to see them kind of mix and do all the sound mixing and all that. And, you know, you got to think at this time, I'm thinking like, bro, like I'm going to be like Pharrell. I'm going to be like Zaytoven. I'm going to be like, I knew I wanted to make beats for rap and hip, because that's all I listened to at the time. All I listened to was rap music. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to be like one of those guys. Kanye West was a huge part of my life at the time, because you know, he was making stuff nobody ever heard before, and not just his beats, and his whole message was like, man, he made some fire beats. So I had this internship, and you know, this guy, real good up on the piano. I forget his name, but you know, he was showing me a little something, something. And I just remember, like, once I got in front of the keyboard, and I was just like, I'm not about to do this. Like, I don't want to make beats, because it's different when, you know, you got to put the work in, and you kind of have to be structured and actually study music, and actually, you know, study the craft and practice when it comes to all that, you know, because I was never really consistent with, you know, my whole drumming activity that I did. I, you know, was in the marching band. I got kicked out. So it was just like, but it was this thing I felt that I was meant to do because everybody else said it, and it just made me feel cool, right? And I got people's attention for it. That's where I got my validation. I was the drummer boy. So like, that's just something that I want you to think about. Like, where are you getting your validation from? What's shaping your identity? Um, and two, I think about people who maybe who like go into, you know, certain career paths, or make certain choices in life, right? Whether that's crime, gangs, you know, a lot of those people may have been doing it because other people was doing it. They saw, you know, this is the only way, right? Or maybe you were forced into something. The porn industry too, that's another big thing. I was reading somewhere that a lot of those failed actors in Los Angeles, failed actresses, end up getting into porn, which is kind of disturbing. That you know, you gave up on an artistic endeavor just to make easy money, right? But you know, if you're pretty, if you look good on camera, you know, people are probably, oh, I'm so beautiful, you're so beautiful. You know, you see other people doing it, and it's like, I can make some easy money. OnlyFans too, that kind of fall into that. But that's just how it is. It's how it is, and it's something we should all think about as well. So, you know, and growing up in Detroit too, like me making beats, like one thing I realized, like everybody trying to rap, like, oh, you know, and they only doing it because everybody else doing it. That's, you just see somebody else doing it. You know, you might got a little flow to you, but you really ain't that good. But somebody else telling you like, hey man, you should, you know, get in this rap game. And you're just gonna be just like everybody else. Just like everybody else. So, you know, who are we trying to be? What's shaping our identities? That's a very critical question that I think we should all think about. And, you know, you may not fit in anywhere. And if it does feel tempting to want to fit in somewhere, because being alone is tough. And I've experienced it. I know what it's like to be alone. Like I said, I never felt like I could fit in a box. Never felt that I can do that. So being alone is tough, and we can easily fall into any sort of group, just to give us that sense of validation. And I do think uh, being alone can be good for you. And I speak from experience. I speak from just for the past 10 years. I again was always just so focused on building a career, finding out what I love to do, doing everything I could to be somebody. So again, I especially for men, I think it's very necessary for us to be alone because we need that time to hone in on our craft, and we have to build. Like I said before, men have to produce. We have to produce. And two, so when I started out in high school, I again was a drummer boy, gave up on that, and then eventually ended up going to community college. Once I found film, that's what really shaped my identity. I was the filmmaker, I was the director. I loved movies. But what really, slapped me across the face at the time was I remember my goddad, the same guy who told me, I should save myself in marriage. And that information had, blew my mind because no one had ever told me that before. And then I see him, he's a man with a wife and kids. He's got a happy life. He has the life that most people want. So you trust what he says. And I think that's why that was effective. A lot of people, they say a lot of things, but you got to look at their life, look at the results, look at the fruit. Are they bearing a life that you would want to even live? So I really care about and trust what he says. And he told me, your calling, the Lord told me your calling is to be a preacher. That scared me. Because you got to think, I had just kind of found my niche. I found what I thought I was meant to do. I thought I was meant to, make film, and that's it. I love storytelling. I love the visual medium. I love the craft of filmmaking. I love the process of it, especially after making films. And then over time, once I actually made something, I was like, wow, okay, yes, this is something I actually really love doing. But then, even then, when he told me that, I was 18 at the time. And all I knew was watching movies was what kind of, I only knew filmmaking from the extent of watching it. And I knew the product could be powerful. So I'm like, look, I'm gonna go all in on this. But when he said that your calling is to be a preacher, I felt a clash of identities. I'm like, okay, filmmaker Josh or Christian Josh. So immediately I started to suppress that. I suppressed the Christian Josh because it couldn't have been true. I've never preached before. I don't know what saving myself in marriage looks like. I don't know what having a relationship with Christ looks like. I don't know the Bible. I've never read the Bible from front to back. So I'm thinking like, okay, well, all right. Where do we go from here? So I'll never forget. I eventually ended up getting this feeling. It was one of these nights, man. It was I was in my apartment in Tallahassee, and I swear it was like a angel spoke to me. I could just hear. I literally could hear God's voice. I was like lying in bed, and I just heard my heart just started beating out of nowhere. It was like boop 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 boop. It's like boop 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 boop. It was like, it was a weird feeling. It was almost like something spiritual was happening, but I could feel it literally in my flesh, in my body. But it was saying like, your calling is to be a preacher. Your calling is to be a preacher. You're going to be a preacher. And I'm like, wow. And then I'm telling y'all, like, I suppressed that even. Like, I pretended that didn't even exist. I pretended it didn't exist because it couldn't have been true. I'm supposed to make films. This is my calling. This is my journey. I just got this new passion that I fell in love with. Like, I can't give that up now. So I eventually ended up getting some roommates who were into filmmaking like I was, and they ushered me into this whole world of filmmaking that just made me love it more. Because you got to think, when I fell in love with filmmaking, it was just like only certain movies that I knew of. Like, I wasn't really into, understanding how to create genre, or, really doing the research on directors and understanding what an auteur director is and how certain directors have their own voices and their own vision. The idea that a Tarantino movie is a distinct voice unto himself, because I was really thinking about movies from the standpoint of, okay, you have these big blockbusters like Transformers. So it was just this whole world of filmmaking that they ushered me into. Independent filmmaking was another big one too. They were like, okay, independent film is a whole different niche in itself. So it was just this whole world of filmmaking that I was thrusting myself into. So that was my thing. I was the filmmaker. I was going to be the director. That was what I was going to do. And then eventually I applied to Florida State Film School. They had in their application an essay component. You didn't need to submit a short film like you needed to at USC, UCLA, Chapman, NYU, all the big names in film schools. You didn't really need to have a short film, and there was no way that I was going to pull that off. Like, I didn't know how to make a short film. I didn't know how to do that with my application. So I was really putting a lot of stock into this Florida State Film School application. So I did that, and then I immediately started to get rejection letters. Nope, 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 nope. So then I was like, okay. Because I applied everywhere. I applied to USC, I applied to all the other ones. And then I was really banking on Florida State. So then Florida State, I applied to theirs, got the letter. Nope, didn't get theirs. So, and then my roommates who were, ushered me into this film lifestyle, they got into the media production program at Florida State, which was kind of cool because they were able to do the film without the film program in itself. So it really worked out for them in a good way. So yeah, I really latched on to that filmmaking endeavor for sure. Um, but it felt good because we all want to feel like we're part of something. We all want to feel like people have our back, and that this thing that we're doing is going to give us meaning. We all want that sense of validation. We all want to feel seen. And I remember too, and I think of fraternities like this too. People who join fraternities, all the just in general, right? Because frats, they provide a community for you that you may not be able to get anywhere else. And I'll never forget, I had ended up finding a film frat at Syracuse University. And I was like, okay, this could be something cool, because at the time, at Syracuse, they didn't have a film school. So, well, no, they did have a film school, but I couldn't get into the film school because it was like credit wise, it didn't work out. But they didn't have like a film club, just like a regular film club that you can do. Maybe I could have started one, now that I think about it, but I wanted to get in their film fraternity, and that's something else that I was putting a lot of stock into, because I was like, all right, well, if I get into the film school, then bam, we're good. I'm going to meet people who are interested in the same thing as I am. I got all this film knowledge. I've made a short film before. this could be people I can be friends with and I can, know for a lifetime and kind of keep in touch with, because it was so hard for me to make friends on campus. 2 years older than everybody because I kind of took 2 gap years before going to Syracuse. So I was a lot older in a sense. Um, I was a poli-sci major, wrote for the school newspaper. So, and I was a resident advisor. So like, it was a lot of time on my hands. I didn't really have a lot of time to, just kind of like sit around and hang out with people and go do stuff. So this film club was something I really wanted, this film frat. And I didn't even get into that. I remember getting a text from them in the middle of the night. They were like, nope. So that's how it is sometimes, man. That's how it is. And I will say too, that's something that we all sort of are drawn to. We all want to get that sense of identity. We want to get that sense of validation. And I'll say recently sort of fell into this podcast because I can see this as a manifestation of the calling that most people were telling me about. Because I don't know how to get started in a church. Like, I don't know if that's what preaching looks like, me doing it in a church. I can see myself speaking to sort of young people or speaking about abstinence. I can see myself doing that. But it took me a while to come into this. Like, this wasn't something that happened overnight, for sure. I would say for, after Syracuse and after the film frat, it was all, finding a career path. So at Syracuse, I did end up writing for my newspaper. And then that was my thing too, was journalism. So I kind of like was toying with that. So it's like journalism, film. And then journalism was another huge part of my identity. So kind of tackle journalism 1000%, went all in on it. And then I was like, all right, okay, this is something that can make me money, get me a stable job. So took on the journalism. And then that was a huge thing. And then that took off. And I ended up getting a job at Fox News. But that even wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't fulfilling to do that. And then, it all kind of changed when I went to Nashville. And then Nashville was a very critical experience for me because I, for the first time, I found good church community. And then I, was given an opportunity to be a discipleship to ninth grade boys. So when I did that, I was like, all right, okay, well, this is something I could see myself doing, talking about eradicating porn, speaking to young men who are struggling with lust. That's something I could see myself doing. That's something I really wanted to do because it really, everything else was like they were fun to do, but they weren't really all that fulfilling, right? Because when I already made the short film, I made it like, okay, I'm gonna make more stuff. Don't worry. But then it's like, you know, film is sort of one thing. With journalism is cool too. I like journalism because that's very that could be a lot of journalism. It can be very impactful, especially when you get into exposing the dark elements of the political world and holding officials accountable. I love that element of it. But when it comes to building young men, that's what I like. That's what I like doing. So, where do you draw your validation from? What's shaping your identity? That's something you should think about. Like, who are you trying to be, right? And why? Where are you getting that from? I look at a lot of people too. They're just like, dressing a certain way, they're talking a certain way, and it's like that's not even really your true authentic self. You're only doing that because it looks cool to you, or somebody else may have told you it looked cool. But is that really you? Is that really something you want to do? But so yeah, it's just some thoughts that I wanted to talk about in this podcast. I also found it interesting too. When I interviewed that satanic leader, everyone's like freaked out that I interviewed him, and I'm just like, how often do we do demonic stuff, right? It's just because it's not blatantly satanic, that doesn't mean that is not demonic, right? What music are we listening to? What are you idolizing? How are you living your life? How are you talking about people when they're not around? Stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's this episode. Um, Interviewed the satanic cult leader. He seemed like a normal guy. Excuse me. I don't know what he does. Um, Specifically as a Satanist, I didn't really get that deep into it, but maybe someday I'll do a podcast on it when I learn more. But thank you guys for listening to episode 6. I'm gonna take a break for the holidays. I'm going to just focus on spending time with family and turn my brain off for a little bit and really ramp up this podcast at the beginning of the new year. So just think about that. Where are you getting your validation from? Why? What's shaping your identity? And is that something that really fulfills you? And most importantly, does it serve God's will? Because again, journalism to me was great. It was practical. It made me money. Filmmaking is an artistic outlet, but neither of those things are doing what I think this podcast will do directly for people. I got a comment the other day from a 16-year-old. He commented on my last video and he said that, I really helped him a lot with the message I shared about my journey and being abstinent and dating. And stuff like that is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So stay tuned, guys. Stay tuned. Again, I got a huge vision for this podcast. I'm going to make documentaries. I'm going to interview couples who have a passion in sharing their personal convictions and how they abstained from physical intimacy while dating. Maybe they didn't hold hands until they got married. Who knows? Everyone has a different story. So I'm gonna get into that. Thank you guys for listening. Episode 6, episode 7 coming after the new year. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and peace out.